Hoy Tennis Pro here, talking to you about strings. My student asked me what kind of strings to play with, and I just didn't think about it. It's just stuff you learned over time. We'll discuss to you what string to choose, and we'll introduce the 4 different types of strings and discuss other factors. First factor, durability versus playability. How long will the string last to how well it plays? If your child or you cannot feel the difference between your strings at day 0 and day 40, then that's an issue about playability. Okay, but as they get better, they'll start to feel the difference between day 0 and day 40. Basically, at day 0, the tension will be perfect. So your string bed will be even and everything will work out. As the days go by, your string will stretch, different parts will fray, the crosses will rub against the mains, and when the crosses rub against the mains, it creates little grooves. And some people like it better when the string has created a little bit of groove on the racket. Basically, for tension, the higher the tension, the more control, because the longer the ball stays on the racket. So the stiffer your racket bed is, the ball hits it and it flattens and it pops off. So the stiffer your racket bed is, the ball hits it and stays there, and you get more control. However, when you play with certain strings, it feels like the ball hits it, the string goes inside the frame and comes back out, giving you really good control. Okay, so the issue about tension is I always start in the middle of the racket. So look at your racket. It always says 55 to 65. I string at 50. I string it right in the middle, 60. And I see how it plays, and I go up or down. And when you go up or down, 2 pounds makes a big difference. So I normally go up by 1 pound at every string job. Go up 1, see how it feels. Go back down 2, and play around for the middle. Okay. So durability is one issue, how often they break strings, and playability is how well it plays. Your racket head determines also how the racket plays. You may or may not know it, but the tighter the pattern, 16 by 19 or anything in the 20s, you have really small string holes on your frame. And if you have really small string holes on your frame, you have more control, because the bigger the holes are, the more power comes off your racket, but the more the strings will move. So if your holes are large, crosses the main form a large hole, you get a lot of movement, and then your string will break. Okay, so the big problem was when I was a kid, I played with a big hole racket, and I didn't realize it, and I played a lot of spin. So playing type affects durability. The more spin your child or you hit, top spin on one side, slice on the other, the more movement of the strings you get, the more your racket strings will break. So those are 3 factors to think about: durability, playability, type of racket, tension. The last thing they talk about is gauge of string. The normal gauge is a 16 gauge string, and what this is basically the thickness of the string. Be careful, because sometimes they don't use numbers like gauge, and so they have other measurements for gauge. They'll talk about it in terms of millimeters. So 1.35 millimeters to 1.4 millimeters is a 15 gauge string. That's a really thick string, and I feel really crap. 1.25 to 130 is a 16 gauge string. 1.2 to 1.25 is a 17 gauge string. It's just getting really thin. I wouldn't recommend playing with anything thinner than 17 gauge, because it'll break. Okay, so normally I just stay in the middle of 16. If you find that you don't break strings at 16, try the 17. The thinner the gauge is, the more lively the strings are, meaning more power, and to me, you get more feel on the ball. So those are considerations before you even look at string types. There are 4 string types. There's natural gut, there's multi-filament, there's polyester, and then there's synthetic gut. Natural gut is made from cow intestines. It's very elastic. It feels, when you string with natural gut and you hit a ball, it feels like the ball goes inside the racket and comes back out. There's a slight delay. It's kind of weird. You have to get used to playing with natural gut. It keeps its tension for a very long time. It plays pretty well. Not super durable. Vulnerable to water. You have to be careful about that. So um, the third thing is natural gut's normally really expensive. If you play in like high humidity climates like Thailand or Hawaii, gut was not feasible. I mean, it feels great, but it once it frays a little, it's gonna fray and pop. I've had my natural gut in my bag and it breaks. And the thing costs like 30, 40, $50. So it's a really hard string to maintain. It's a hard string to string. So if you have your own stringer, you have to pre-stretch it. If the string kinks, it will break. So when you string it yourself, there are a lot of issues with it. So it's much better to, unless you're playing for money and you got a sponsor, I would not recommend gut. I would try it one time because it feels great. It's kind of cool. Oh, I'm playing with gut. But the reality is, price point is very high. Doesn't last very long. Volume of the water. Multi-filaments are strings that have like rope. It's strung all together, and it plays like gut. And you'll know it's a multi-filament because it starts to fray. Doesn't just snap. Okay. They're very powerful. They're not durable. You have less control with them. Um, there's a wide range of pricing and it's less durable. So you really gotta look at your string. When you pick up a string pack, it will say multi-filament on it. And then you know. And then you gotta kind of look at what's it made out of. Like there's a lot of things they make it out of. The price range is variable. It's okay, I think, as a multi-filament, but I think it's better than the next category of synthetic gut. Synthetic gut has a monofilament core. It's a solid core with a wrap around it. I used to play with print synthetic. It plays very well. It's not very durable. Um, it's playable. It's cheap. I break it easy. It's pretty much average. It's average durability, average power, average feel, average playability. Okay, so if you go to the multi-filaments, it's a little bit more specialized. They have certain strings that play very well. There's certain strings that are very durable. They make the string the way they want to make the string. And with a multi-filament, I've heard of strings that are like waterproof because the outer layer is like waterproof, while the inner layer is more about playability. So you gotta do the research on that. I like polyester. Single monofilament, very durable. It has a low power level, but it has incredible control and big spin. In my opinion, when I play with Luxilon Alu Power, it changes my bounce by about this much. It's bad for volleys. It's just not a volleying string for me. It's tough on frames. It's tough on your arm, but I don't have a big swing speed. Those things are not factors for me. So I recommend polyester because it's just a control factor and it lasts forever. I rarely break my polyester. So I went to polyester just because I break everything else. And I'm not a big hitter, but I play a lot of spin. Top spin serve, top spin ground stroke, slice backhand, and that kind of movement on my string causes me to break strings. When I play with polyester, I have to change the strings at 6 weeks because I don't break them. I tried a gut poly hybrid, but that string to me, I have to swing really fast. It's just for it to really work because it's really lively. If I swing really fast, because the theory is with poly is it's a very firm string bed. The ball hits the strings and it compresses and comes off, so it gives you more spin and more control than normal. So you can really wad up the ball. I mean, you can really take a good swing speed at the ball and it's going to stay in the court because of the low power level. But to me, that kind of control and the amount of spin bounce. When I first tried it and I hit a kick serve, I think the spin bounce was about this much more than normal. Okay, but it's up to you. You need to try it. Polys tend to be mid-range pricing. If gut is going to be like in Thailand, gut is about 40 $45, and the poly is 15. But the synthetics are not that much cheaper. They're maybe I'm sorry, my poly is like 30, but I never break it. And then the synthetics and the normal the synthetics and the multifilaments are about $15. Strings are expensive here. So if you're in America, my Prince of Egg was like $3. You know, it was so easy to string that and break it, but it's so annoying to go and restring your racket and play again, because every time you string your string gets a little softer. That's another consideration also. So if you ever stop playing tennis for a little while, you got to cut the strings, because that strings on your frame make your frame soft. You lose, it gets more flexible. Every time you string your racket, it sort of makes your frame more flexible. Okay. So go on the market. I recommend Luxilon Alu Power. I like it. You know, that's the string I've been using. There are other brands of polyester. I don't use them because I don't want to take the effort to try them out. Solenko's, I heard good things about Solenko, but there is one caveat. Polyester strings, like Luxilon 4G, is known as a stiff poly, and that just killed my arm. So polys have a stiffness indicator, sort of, and they rate stiff poly or soft poly. Luxilon Alu Power is a soft poly. I recommend soft poly because the stiff poly, oh, just killed my arm. Okay, but you gotta try it out for your own preference. So what have we talked about in terms of choosing your string? It's about durability. How long do you want it to last? Playability. How well does it give you response and control? You got to think about what gauge you want to use on your string. Like I would recommend 16 gauge, which is about 1.25 to 1.30 millimeters. The tension, I would start in the middle and move up and down. Look at your racket. If you have a racket with large crosses and mains that form large holes, you're going to break strings more than normal people. And you have more power. You got a racket with small holes, then you have more control, but you have less power. Do you play a lot of topspin, a lot of slice? If you play really flat, I would recommend going to a thinner gauge and going for the most playable racket string out there to get the best feel. String style, gut's good, but it's expensive. Try it. It might be worth it. You might never break it. Multi-filaments have a wide variety, from cheap to expensive, and you got to decide, do I want to restring my racket all the time to maintain that playability and maintain that tension? Because you might have tension loss. But remember, your frame gets softer every time you restring it. Synthetic guts fall in that category as multi-filaments, but synthetic guts are really cheap. They don't play very well. And polyester to me is the best. It's a monofilament, single core, plays very well. Watch out for gimmick strings. They have like square strings. They have like hollow strings. The hollow string is like a tube. You break that so easily. It does play well, but you break it so easily. So if you have any questions, drop a comment and I'll hit you up. Boy Tennis Bro, talking to you about strings.